went to this priest who was very passionate about teaching theology of the body as well, and I asked him, I said, how come like no one's talking about this from the pulpit? Like how come we don't hear about this very often, you know, about sexualization of the culture basically? And he said, you know, Michelle, people come to church to get away from the sex-saturated world. Like the church is like the last place they really want to hear this message, because it's a little depressing, right? So I guess I just keep going back to that, and I think that's why I may have had a hard time with this at first. At first I thought it was going to be like an easy, like, yeah, no-brainer, it's the easy presentation. I think I know, you know, what to say. But the more I thought about it, more I reflected on it, it was becoming almost a little, I don't know how to describe it. I just had a harder time than I thought presenting this. And I think it's because the topic is, it's necessary to talk about, but it can get really despairing and depressing if once we start getting into this. So, full disclosure, I have a hard time, but I think it'll be all right. I start with this quote from Christopher West. If we want to know what is most sacred in this world, all we need to do is look for what is most violently profaned. And I remember reading that when I first read Theology of the Body for Beginners and thinking, yeah, I mean, doesn't that make sense? If we want to look at what's considered to be sacred, our fertility, our sexuality, human dignity, our bodies, well, to look in the culture, we see what is just profaned, right, and degraded. So that's kind of like the overall theme of this talk. I also had thought, well, I might have people in the audience, I don't know, I mean, there might be some of you that might think, and people that watch this video, that maybe our culture isn't really hypersexualized. Maybe there are people that really don't think it's that big of a deal. And so I did the rest of this first part of the talk as if I'm talking to those people. If you are still maybe not entirely convinced that our culture is hypersexualized, I'm going to present the following evidence as truth. Okay, so I started out, prior to coming here, I had a few part-time jobs. I was a personal trainer. It's a whole other story of my life, but I worked in merchandising. Does anybody know what merchandising is? I did it part-time, if you ever heard of merchandising. And you can probably imagine what it is, but it's basically I was tasked with the duty of going to different grocery stores and different stores, retail stores, and putting out displays of magazines. So magazines was the product. So in your local grocery store, the checkout lanes, those are filled by somebody, a merchandiser, right? So I started with the media, and I thought, well, let's just go over forms of media and what, you know, when I think of the culture, I think of, well, what is the media? What is the message that is being sent? So we start with magazines because it's an easy one. It's the go-to. So I just went back in time to 1950 when there was a magazine called Look magazine, which I'm sure like none of us have heard of, right? Just a magazine from back in the 50s, right? And I just Googled, you know, magazine covers, and I just found this one. It's Bob Hope, and I think it's Joan Crawford, I don't know. And I'm sure no one here even knows who they are. But anyways, you know, just classic photo, right? Or just, you know, very classy, you know, very simple, not a lot of type on the front, just, you know, him looking at her, and I thought, well, that's nice. That's a nice look. Does anybody know, we've talked about this before in past sessions, but does anybody know what happened in like the 60s, early 70s? That, I mean, a lot of things happened, but I don't know if we're on the same wavelength.
Relevant to tonight's
yeah, to this?
thing? Yeah. Sorry, I'll give you my second guess first. I think that's kind of where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing that happened in the 60s was I'm going to get it wrong again. No, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the response. I was saying, yeah, the sexual revolution was my first guess.
Yes, and you were right.
Okay.
You were right. And with that came the, you know, the pill and Roe versus Wade. Yeah. So anyway.
I was going for Humane Vitae.
Right. Yes. Good Catholic answer right there.
Yeah.
Humane Vitae. Humane Vitae. Nice. So I fast forward past those decades because I'm like we don't have time to get into all the decades. So I fast forward right to the 80s. And I just picked a magazine called Muscle and Fitness, and I was just looking at the covers, and just to show you that it got some risque, right? I mean, this is you know, so I'm gonna be 40 this year, so the 80s, that's like when I was, you know, small, and then 90s I was a teenager. So I was trying to think, I'm like, well, the 60s and 70s, you know, it started, and then maybe it came full force in the 80s, I don't know. But I just thought it was funny that, you know, Recharge Your Love Life is on a Muscle and Fitness magazine, like, like, what does that have to do with, what does recharging your love have to do with muscle and fit? It was just interesting. And of course, scantily clad models, right? But then I thought, well, let me not pick on that. Let me just go with what I remember reading. 17 magazine, 1990. Does anybody know who this actress is?
Cameron Diaz.
It's Cameron Diaz. Look at that. Look at she's so young. And, you know, because I thought, well, as a teen, you know, what did I read 17, YM, Teen Magazine. Nothing risque, nothing. There was never any, and even the headlines, you know, fashion, 9 amazing teenagers, class acts, you know, wet and wild water sports, seeing stuff. I mean, this is just very teen, right? This is nothing. Okay, well. 1995, I'm like, okay, Shape, you know, that's Gabby Reese. She was a beach volleyball player. And I'm like, okay, this is still, we're still good. You know, it's Shape magazine. It's all about fitness and food, and okay, you know, no problem. But of course, the best-selling magazine currently, and probably maybe of all time, women's magazine. Does everybody know what it is? Cosmo. So if you can Google Cosmo magazine covers, I felt like I was, I mean, you're just inundated, and you just click images, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? So I found a tame one that I could show you, 2010, and I just thought it was hilarious because the word virgin stuck out to me. I'm like, what? Virgins in Cosmo, it says, for those that can't read. We thought this day would never come. I'm like, what does that even mean? Surrounded by 100 sex questions, you on top, the fierce new secrets to success. So even the article that doesn't have anything to do with sex, you know, it has to do with, you know, work. Of course, they have to have a sexual innuendo. 4 signs he's craving you. And then just because, you know, 100 calories at any meal and beauty tips just thrown in there, right? And I don't know if you noticed this, and I'm getting to the point of this whole thing. If you ever notice, it made headlines recently. Walmart just recently got rid of Cosmo at the checkouts because Cosmo is on the bottom. It's on, like, floor length. Who can see those at floor length? Children. But they'd always put blinders, and the blinders are black. The blinders go over this, though. They're covering the copy. They're not covering the woman, you know, in the front. I don't know if you ever noticed that. They're covering up the words because they don't want kids to read the words. Because that is just how profane it is, right? Because every single headline, every single article has something sexual in it. The final one I'll put up, and I'm only going to put it up for a second because I feel like I'm going to scandalize you, but I mean, this came out, this magazine cover, this magazine came out right when I started this magazine job, and I remember it was pulled from the shelves by some of our local family-owned discount stores because people complained. And I was like, oh, which one is it? It's Women's Health. And it's just to show you, like, and I apologize ahead of time, but it's just to show you, like, this is Women's Health magazine, and this is just from 2015. Like now we're naked. Like now we're naked. Like now, like, well, how did we get from, you know, we've, and I don't even want to leave about this. I don't care who you are, Kobe, whoever you are. Like, why are you naked? But like, you know, why did you feel necessary on a Women's Health magazine? I mean, not that it would make it any better on a different magazine, but it's like, that's like on Maxim, that's like on Playboy. You know, like, we don't need to see that. So we're subjected to this, and these are in grocery stores. So maybe I wouldn't be making a big deal out of it, but this is just in your local grocery store. It's at Kroger, you know what I mean? Like, anyone can see it. So it makes me a little frustrated and angry. And also what happened, as soon as I started that job, what was the first, Vanity Fair had just come out with their article, and Caitlyn Jenner was on the cover. You know, and so I had to put that magazine out. And I know it sounds so silly, like, wow, I had a moral dilemma putting out a magazine, like, what's the big deal? But I felt really like I'm promoting something by putting these magazines out for sale. No one bought it, so it's no big deal. But no one's really buying magazines, honestly. I mean, people will read it and, you know, put them back. And I've been telling you, I was tempted, and I think I did. I put the Vanity Fair article like where it didn't belong. I'm like, I don't want anybody buying this. I put it in the bag. That was my big rebellion. But it was just, that's just one media. All right, one form of media. So now we go to TV and what's on TV and film. I titled this, we become what we consume. Like, what are we watching? What are we reading? What are we listening to? Because it makes a difference. It might sound like you're being scrupulous, like overly obsessed. Like, does it really matter, you know, what I watch on TV? What I watch on TV is my business, and that's fine. But I just think we should acknowledge the trends that have happened. So I just Googled like the top shows that are on right now by rating, the popularity. Is anyone surprised that HBO's Game of Thrones is #1? I don't know. It didn't really surprise me because AMC's The Walking Dead is second. I used to watch that. ABC's Pretty Little Liars. And you don't have to say if you watch these shows. We're not judging. It's a safe space. And then HBO's Westworld, which I don't know what that's about. And I apologize, I didn't Google that. Does anybody know? Okay. No one watches HBO. All right. Yeah, really. I Googled ABC's Pretty Little Liars because I recognize it's based on a book, because I put out books and magazines, and I'm like, It was described as Desperate Housewives for teens. So that just tells you. And I read one storyline, it said that one of the male characters had an affair with one of his students. I'm like, okay, I think that tells me like all I need to know, right? Like, I don't want to watch that. So I don't say this to be like, wow, you know, we should all be sitting home watching reruns of Little House on the Prairie or Leave It to Beaver, or Brady Bunch, or Sesame Street, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to sanitize it all, but even if there's not sex in The Walking Dead or whatever, you have to admit that there's violence, right? I mean, these aren't like feel-good shows. These are very dramatic, but they're very entertaining, right? Books and movies, I picked the two most popular ones that I think you all have heard of. Da Vinci Code, I'm guilty of buying that. That was like, everyone read that book when that came out. It was 2001, I remember. And I remember calling like a friend, I'm like, have you heard about this book? And he's like, if you mention the Da Vinci Code, I'm gonna kill you. Everyone's talking about this stupid book. I'm like, oh my God, it's so great, you gotta read it. Clearly I was not, if you don't know what the Da Vinci Code is about, it's a good book, we have to admit it's a good book, right? But it's based, you know, Dan Brown says that, the author says that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had a baby. I mean, like, just very, you know, this does not go along with what we believe. The movie earned $758 million. So it's not like no one went to the movie, you know, people are clearly buying it and watching it. 50 Shades of Grey, I mean, 100 million copies sold. I mean, if people are going to see it. Movie earned $571 million. So these aren't like unique or rare, or these are just something that some people want. Like, clearly there's a niche here, right? Clearly people are watching this. And what does that say about our culture, right? And if you don't know what 50 Shades of Grey is about,
Please don't look it up if you don't know.
I've had to put some good news in here. The best-selling book of all time is still the Bible. They don't list it anymore at the top for some reason of the New York Times bestseller, but it is. 3.9 billion copies in the past 50 years, so whatever that tells you, praise God. The Passion of the Christ is still the highest-grossing R-rated movie of all time. So, and they say the sequel to it that's coming out is going to be even bigger. So,
There's a sequel?
well, I should say like the next in the Mel Gibson and
Passion of Christ.
yeah.
It's a resurrection
Yeah.
of the Christ.
Right. I'm going to go with the theme. The second highest grossing R-rated movie is Deadpool.
Really?
I wonder how far behind that is.
It made $359 million domestically, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what.
I figured like Titanic or Avatar.
Yeah.
R-rated. Oh,
R-rated.
R-rated.
Titanic.
R-rated.
R-rated domestically.
No, it's not.
R-rated.
Yeah, it's PG-13, but it's
It's R-ish.
Those don't always
Again.
match.
Back to back.
All right, back to the bad news. Sorry. Here comes the internet. All right.
Oh,
One more thing about TV. Well, I don't know. I guess I don't want people to think I'm harping on. Like, I don't want that show now. And I think I'm hypersensitive and aware of all the sexual innuendos in that show. Every single show. And I will just mention this one scene. Are you guys familiar with Friends at all? If I say
Yes.
Rachel and Ross, okay,
Yes.
whatever. The guy and the girl. It doesn't even matter. You don't even need to know the storyline. But it's one of the earlier episodes, and they're at the museum. He works at a museum, and it's after hours, and they're making out or whatever. And he rolls on top of her, and they had a picnic earlier, like in the museum. And so they roll on top of something, and he says, "Uh-oh," and she goes, "It's okay. It's okay, you know, it happens to guys all the time." And he's like, "No, we rolled over on the juice box." And like, meaning like the juice box exploded, right? But she was saying like, "Oh no, it's okay, like it happens." She was insinuating that a sexual act took place, or that something happened. And I remember going into work, I'm 16 or 17 years old, and it was my first job, and my boss was saying, I remember this as I was writing this topic, I'm like, oh, I remember there's this woman that I worked with, and not too much older than me at the time, maybe she was in her 20s, I guess. And she goes, "You know that episode of Friends that aired last night?" I'm like, because everyone watched Friends, you know, we all saw it. She goes, "I think that was really out of line. I think that was really over the top." And I remember thinking, she's such a, you know, like, who cares? But that was a bit, like, when you think about it, like, wow. And that show, if you watch some episodes, I mean, they talk about pornography. It's amazing what I look at now and think, I wouldn't want to be like someone I know that's a young age watching this show. Like, I don't want to watch it now. But I would say that the desensitized, whatever, that started early, to the point where I didn't even, like, no one even thought twice about it. Like, this is 90210, Melrose Place. I mean, all these shows, they all had some sort of relationship, and in the relationship, no one was chaste. You know what I mean? Like, everyone lived together before they were married on these shows, so it just became the norm. And so I would say a lot of shows have had that influence. But then here comes the internet, which, okay. So, pornography. I mean, this is just like what has happened, right? This is I don't know how many billions of dollars. Let's not get into it. But just a few slides about pornography, because it's an issue we have to discuss. So I took this, just one stat from, so it's Fight the New Drug, and they just came out with like a different website where it's just all facts about pornography. The damage to the heart, the damage to the brain, and the damage to like the world. It is fascinating. So just this one line. Porn use is linked to poor mental health outcomes. This link is particularly strong when porn users engage in a pattern of self-concealment, which is when they do things they're not proud of and keep them a secret from their friends and family members. This pattern not only hurts their relationships and leaves them feeling lonely, but also makes them more vulnerable to emotional and psychological problems. For both male and female porn users, their habit is often accompanied by problems with anxiety, body image issues, poor self-image, relationship problems, insecurity, and depression. So I mention pornography because people, they want to change the subject. They're like, let's not talk about that. You know, like, no, we kind of have to. Like, unfortunately, we have to talk about it. People are, and very religious people don't want to discuss it because it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary because it's out there. And for those that maybe just don't think that it's affecting them, it's only a big deal for those people who are addicted or who watch it. Like, who cares? No. A meta-analysis of 33 studies found that exposure to either nonviolent or violent pornography increased behavioral aggression, including both violent fantasies and actual violent assaults. So if we're trying to create a culture of life, a culture of love, like, we need to talk about what's preventing that, right? It's a private matter, right? Private thing happens in someone's private home. No. They might consume it privately, but it affects all of us. Adolescents who watch porn are more likely to engage in sexual behavior in early age, led to increased costs in health care because of the onslaught of potential, STDs, which are still on the rise. I don't have any STD stats for you. You can Google that later, but that's obviously a problem. The people who star in those films who are doing that, like, it's their choice, that's their lifestyle, and who are we to judge, right, or something like that. Well, there's plenty of people who are in that, who have gotten out of that industry that have reported back how damaging it is. Because what is it ultimately? It's ultimately you're not acknowledging the dignity of the human person. It's degradation of the human body, right, of the person. Like, where's the humanity there? It's objectification, right? So this is a quote from Mary Eberstadt. She's the author of Adam and Eve After the Pill, Paradoxes of the Sexual Revolution. She says, the pornography world is a world rife with everything one would want any genuinely loved one to avoid. Drugs, exploitation, physical harm, AIDS. And I'll just end with this. Well, there's 2 more slides, but do you know any of these names? Do you recognize any of these names? I'm guessing you don't. So, August Ames, she's 23. Olivia Lua, 23. Shyla Stiles, 35. Yuri Love, 31. Olivia Nova, 20. Based on their names, and the topic, you could probably guess, they were adult film actresses. They all died recently, the past 4 months, just in the past 4 months, from either suicide. This young woman was apparently being bullied on Twitter because she wouldn't perform a certain sex act, and so people got on Twitter and attacked her for it, and she committed suicide. A couple others had drug overdoses. One died in her sleep from something, and then the other one, the 20-year-old, died from kidney failure due to alcoholism. So clearly a problem, and I guess I mentioned their names because I was in confession with my priest, and the penance was, he goes, you know, for some reason, my news feed wanted me to know about this woman named August Ames who died of a suicide. And I don't know why it came up on my news feed, but I think you should pray for her. He goes, because I'm betting not a lot of people are praying for her soul. And I'm like, you're right. I don't think, do we pray for these, you know, they're still our brothers and sisters in Christ, you know what I mean? Like, they still, we should be praying that they get out of this industry, right? That they can recognize that they deserve better, that this is not healthy and it's just not good. So I just wanted to put their names up there. And there's 2 named Olivia, Yuri, Shyla, August. And it's fascinating to people that it only made headlines because it's been one after another in the past 4 months. Like, yeah, it's something we don't really want to talk about, but we have to talk about it, right? All right. 2 more stats, and then we'll be done with this. Among the effects of the use of pornography are an increased negative attitude toward women, decreased empathy for victims of sexual violence, and an increase in dominating and sexually imposing behavior. So none of this sounds much like this sounds like a problem. There's another stat about divorce and how, I forget the percentage, it was like 40% of divorces, the reasons for it were because of one of the spouses having a problem with pornography. After being exposed to porn, men reported being less satisfied with their partner's physical appearance, sexual performance, and level of affection, and expressed greater desire for sex without emotional involvement. I mean, luckily, and I will mention this, there's help now for that, and I'll just give a shameless plug to OLGC. I mean, this is the first parish I've ever heard of that actually has a group for people who are addicted to pornography, and I think that's wonderful. So this is where they should come, right? They should come to church. We should have the answer for them to help them, because it's clearly a huge issue. All right, moving along. Other evidence, the hookup culture. I'll have a video from Bishop Barron about this later. I had a conversation with a young man, at dinner with a bunch of fathers. And the son, the guy, one of the young men, he's like 23. And he said something like, do you guys, like asking the fathers at the table, do you know like how bad it is out there, like at college? And they all acknowledge, like, no. He goes, you know, yeah, there's drug use and alcohol, he goes, and then just the hookup culture. He goes, just whatever you imagine it is, picture it like just add 10 times more, like it's worse. And I do feel like it's getting worse. And it's been a while since I've been been at college, but it hasn't been that long, and it was kind of not so great then. So I can only imagine it's getting worse, because there's this increased accessibility of sex, and I don't know if anyone really denies that. I mean, we have the internet now. which makes it even more accessible. Not to say that people are just doing this, you know, rapidly, but I mean, it's available. It's not like it's a rare commodity. The Me Too movement and the backlash from that, so this is the Hollywood, you know, sexual assault, the backlash that's coming from that, because it's now, there was an article in the New York Times recently, an opinion piece, about how this woman was saying how, you know, she's going on dates and men they're not even, like, they're apologizing for even just accidentally touching an arm, you know, I mean, that no one knows how to act now. Like, is this assault? Is this right? Like, how do we know I don't know what to do. So you have that. Separating sex from babies has led to legalized abortion, so we have 3,000 unborn lives killed a day in the womb. And of course the pill and contraception. So why worry about a baby, you know, like, let me take a pill to prevent that from happening. It's just all about pleasure, apparently, right? Radical feminists, I just had to put this in because they upset me. Pushing for the rights of sex workers. So we just got done talking about the damage to people in the porn industry, yet if you go on the Women's March website, and the women who organized that Women's March, you know, they're pushing, it says right on there, and it's not something they deny, they want rights for sex workers. They call them sex workers. These are adult film stars and prostitutes. I mean, so we're taking something that we know is wrong, and people are trying to turn it into something that is, no, this is good. This is good. Almost like that video, if you guys watched, if you were here, from Christopher West, he mentions Hugh Hefner, and he took the Playboy magazine, you know, like, look at it, it's good, you know, like, but it's twisted, that's not showing me the human person, that's taking away their humanity, that's degradation and objectification. So I feel like some of these things that were once taboo, now they're being celebrated and normalized, and we can get into other discussions about other topics. I don't have time, but there's things going on in our world that it can become really depressing. But we are becoming desensitized to it. I think we're just so used to it, or we just don't want to think about it, right? What's the price of all of this? The push for this hypersexualization. So I have a video, very short. Did you notice? I guess maybe I just noticed what he said about just going back to 50 Shades of Grey. I hate to keep going back to this movie and this book, but that was kind of the excuse or the reason that I think a lot of women, I talked to a few women about this movie and that book, and, you know, romance novels, let's just go with that one. Romance novels, you know, there's nothing wrong with them, right? But if it's causing a behavior in you that may be sinful, maybe it's not the best thing that you should be consuming. And 50 Shades of Grey, because people said it's just a movie, well, like he said, and he said it's pornography for women, he had said something like, there's a storyline to it. And so people have been saying, like, 50 Shades of Grey is basically just, it's exploitation, it's abuse. And I had some interesting conversations with people about it, and I guess I came across as judging. I was accused of judging somebody, like, are you saying that I'm a horrible person for going to see this movie or reading this book? And don't you know, there's a story to it, it's romantic, and it ends up changing, and I'm like, you know, I guess we're just not going to agree on this topic. But you see how it's something like 50 Shades of Grey, there's been 3 movies now, you know, I mean, like, it's becoming normalized. I mean, how much, I don't know, when is the day we're going to see something worse than 50 Shades of Grey on the big screen, is all I'm going to say. I feel like it's getting to that. Do you say something to the kid? Do you say something to the parents? And scenario number 3. Your good friend posts selfies of herself on Instagram. I'm putting on a girl, maybe guys do this too, but I'm pretty sure it's just a girl thing. On IG, relentlessly. Sometimes she exposes a lot of skin, and it seems like she really likes this attention and the likes. How do you respond to her post? Do you talk to her about it? What do you say? Do you just unfollow? To the side? So if you want to discuss at the table and then discuss, because I kind of want to hear everyone's responses of the talk as a whole. Scenario number 1 was you're invited to a bachelorette party that not exactly, you know, something that would be considered tasteful. So do you go? I'll just say my experience. Well, it was a relative of mine, so I had to go, and this was when I was like 19 or 20. Just felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I just felt uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't want to be here. And then I was invited later to someone else's, and I did decline. And I don't remember the reason I gave. I remember someone asking me, may I ask why? And I just said, I think I just said I'm just not interested. Like, no, I didn't get specific. Again, I'm 19 years old, so I'm 19 or 20. So there was nothing to do with religion. It was just this feeling of, I feel like I'm intruding on someone's honeymoon. I don't want to know. Like, yeah, it's just a personal thing, and I'm not interested in that. Can I just give them a card with like money in it? I don't know. Like, I don't want to invest in that. Yes.
I think a lot of us said that we wouldn't go, and then, like, do we talk about it, do we say why? A lot of it was depending upon the relationship we have with
Yeah,
the person.
depending who they are, yeah. That makes sense.
We had slightly different things. We said that, well, he said that if you were close enough to that person, you could kind of bring up like, hey, like, do we really need to do that? And then as soon as the one person says that, everyone else kind of goes like, yeah, actually, we'd have more fun doing this
Right.
thing.
Pose
So,
another, give another
it's-
option.
Yeah, and like my experience was, the first one I went to, like I kind of didn't really. It was my
Yeah.
first bachelor.
Yeah, I didn't know.
I
was
didn't
like-
really know. I was around the same age, and I was
Yeah.
just like, and the presenter just took a really big one on the wall, and I'm like, I'm just gonna look at the floor,
Yeah.
and just
It's embarrassing.
okay. And a lot of them, and I only knew like 3 or 4 of the girls from there, from work.
Oh.
And yeah, so
Not-
it stunk. But then the second one I went to, we just watched chick flicks all night.
There
It
you
was
go.
so fun. Very fun. We did a paint, like the wood paintings. Like
Oh,
the,
nice, yeah.
Yeah, like sip and paint.
Yeah.
And that was great.
Yeah.
So,
Alternatives are better.
alternatives.
What about the guys?
I think we agreed on
Yeah.
declining.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't, just like,
I think if you're invited to a guy's bachelor party, and are some times where you're not very close with anybody but the groom,
Yeah.
but if you know a lot of the guys, then I feel like you should say something. And I think that a lot of times, it's 1 or 2 guys that want to do this, and the rest of the guys are like, yeah, I'd really rather not. But you have this peer pressure
Mm-hmm.
from culture, and you're like, well, if we don't, then we're weird, or
Yeah.
and as soon as you say something, they're like, oh, this is okay, and then you get a lot of backing. I mean,
Right.
from my experience, the groom didn't want to do it,
Yeah.
but he was just going along with it
Mhm.
because the other guy planned the bachelor party.
Yeah.
But we were, able to change it up and had a lot of
Something
their time.
else,
So
Yeah, I know for my bachelor party, I had to think very carefully who I wanted to be as my best man. Because I had 2 guys. One would be the option I went with. He's really stand-up guy. The other one was actually the one that I had brought up about me being concerned about his wedding and like what he would want. And like, since he was in my party, I would have assumed that he'd offer me to be his party. And then if he wanted to like go to a strip club, I'd probably say like, you really want to do this? I mean, you're about to marry the girl of your dreams, and
You really wanna
so,
start on-
yeah, these people aren't her. And but yeah, the level to which you know somebody really affects what you say or don't say.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a lot to do with it. All right, number 2, you're babysitting. You overhear something, a sexual situation being talked about in a sitcom that a 10-year-old is watching. But the parents know that the child watches this show. They might not know all the details, but maybe they don't think there's anything wrong with it. Do you say something in that moment? I mean, you're the babysitter, you're watching the kid, but it's also not your kid. So, if you say something, do you say something to parents? In the situation I was in, I didn't say anything because he didn't say anything. I just happened to overhear what he was watching. He didn't ask me a question like, what does that mean? You know, like, what are they talking about? Or it was just, I don't know, it was one of the situations I was like, I want to like take that away from him, and yeah. And it wasn't, again, it was Fuller House, so it wasn't like it was a graphic thing, but 10 years old, or actually it was 9. Like, should people be watching that? No, like, I'm not the parent. So I think as single people, those, you know, or those of us that aren't, there's a line, right? And it's like, it's not my kid. I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to seem like I'm judging their parenting style, but maybe they should know that this happened, and I don't know, I think you should be screening what your kid watches.
So you didn't take it away from the kid, but did you tell the parent that that was?
No, because I'm a little too close to the parents, and I might have been seen as trying to be the parent. Yeah, there's other things I could say, but I'll just refrain. But it was nothing, he didn't raise his head and say like, whoa, you know, like he didn't even react at all, which probably should have concerned me, like, hey, he didn't even notice it. So then I thought, like, oh, he probably didn't notice it, like he didn't even hear what they said. So like, I'm overreacting, and it's no big deal. But it's like, I don't know.
So I guess, when our table discussed it, was kind of like, maybe the right decision is to not say anything to the kid immediately, because the kid just doesn't see it, like because he doesn't know about it, and so like the innuendos, references go over his head, and like you know, revealing that to him could be worse than like actually. So maybe. But but we kind of agreed that we should say something to the parents, and I think Lizzie, you brought sort of the idea of saying something like, they said this in the show. Can you believe they said this? And like, stuff like that. So
don't put the blame on them like the parents didn't know.
Yeah.
Because they probably don't know.
Yeah, so, and I'm also thinking like, maybe it's something to do if you want to get the, like, kid doing something else or something. You can just say like, hey, let's play video games. Hey.
Non-violent ones.
Give me an example of one.
Super Mario Kart.
Let's play Mario Kart. Yeah.
You're trying to get your friends to crash.
Yeah,
and you're throwing like rocks
that's
at your
violent.
friends in Mario Kart.
Okay, like
turtles.
kids hit each other with sticks and pretend to fight with swords. Like whatever. Like
it's a different game other than iPad.
It was actually really funny that you brought up like the reference just going over the kid's head, because I know growing up I'd always watch Animaniacs, and watching it again as an adult, and like I don't understand how half of these jokes got past the censor.
Really?
All of them are sexual.
Really? Yeah. Oh my God! I have to watch them.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh! They definitely went over my head, because I remember just like I like their sound. I love that opening song. Like I was older. I was like 12.
They arguably get away with more back in the mid '90s than kid shows today would.
Wow, I'll have to. I don't know.
I mean, like, first of all, I didn't know Fuller House would touch on that. Like, I kind of associated that with Full House, and that was pretty G, PG at the most.
Yeah, it was DJ, the girl, like Candace Cameron's character, DJ. I want to say something like, because I wasn't even really listening. She was some guy was hitting on her, or no, she was hitting on some guy, and it turns out he's gay. And so she says something to that effect. The word gay came out, I think. And then I think, because I wasn't watching, I don't know if he was dancing with a guy. Like, he was dancing with a guy, and then they finally figured out, oh, he's actually gay, like, he likes men, Whatever they said, they made it, like, funny. But I remember he was dancing on the dance floor with a guy. That's all I know. And I don't know what, like, I'm sure it didn't get very provocative, but I was just like, okay,
I think that's relatively new. I don't think they used to do.
No, not in Fuller House. Fuller House, yeah.
No, I mean like just in the
in general.
period. I don't think there was guy on.
No, yeah.
Like,
I mean, it was probably like
just sitcoms.
As innocent as
Seinfeld and Friends would do it.
Oh, Seinfeld and Friends, yeah, all the time.
So, Yeah, definitely not Full House.
Yeah. And so I think, and so I thought about it, I was like, well, maybe parents think that Fuller House, because Full House is so innocent, that Fuller House is just,
I would.
but
I would
it's,
assume that.
you know, again, it probably went over his head, but he definitely saw two guys dancing, so I don't know, you know, what do I say? Like, what do you even say? I don't know. Modern Family, you know, is a very popular show, I know people watch that, and so that's fine, but there was something mentioned. All I know is it caught my ear, and I was like, I don't know.
So what our table said was we wouldn't say anything to the kid, that we would just try and do a different activity with them, like maybe a board game or
Yeah.
go outside or something, and then maybe mention it to the parent, like, hey, did you know that this was talked about on that
Yeah.
show? Because I mean, like, I know for my parents, they watched everything before we did. So they knew exactly what was said,
Yeah.
and I just don't think parents do that as much. They kind of like, all right, well, you know,
They just assume.
good. And maybe it's the iPad, the individual that. But my mom was like, well, there are no secrets. I'm gonna see what you see.
That's what
She
you
saw
said.
she saw the Harry Potter movies before I did.
Oh.
So yeah.
My parents didn't screen anything. Yeah. Well, it was also. I grew up in a different era than you people. Everything was new. MTV was new. Everything was all. It was very
They
exciting.
actually played music on MTV.
They played music, which looking at the videos, oh, no, that's a whole other. Those videos are hilarious, by the way, because they're so
Yeah, they are.
cheesy. All right, number 3. Your good friend posts selfies of herself on Instagram relentlessly. Sometimes she's exposed a lot of skin. Seems she likes the attention. Because who doesn't like all of the likes? I mean, you know, people respond to that. How do you respond to her post? Do you talk to her about it? I mean, do you say anything? Is this one of those situations where maybe you just say it's not worth it? But I mean, I guess for me, I don't really have a friend that does this. Like I was saying earlier, just the fitness people, it just got to be, I mean, talk about body image. I mean, I'm looking at women with like muscles that I want, like, yeah, I want to look like that, I want like that. It's like, whoa, you know, you got to stop yourself and be like, okay, you can become obsessed. And I was at the gym quite a bit for, you know, when I was training for a competition, and it's easy to become obsessed with looking a certain way. And when you have all these people on Instagram and it's like that perfect body, I want to look like that. What do I do? I want to do her workout. What is she eating? I want to eat just like her. You know, like I want to eat and go to the same gym, do the exact same exercises as her, and I want to look just like that. So that's like taking it to an extreme, right? But then there's the other side, which is just, you know, selfies. There's something wrong with selfies, I guess, but too many of them. What does that say? It's a selfie. I mean, it's selfish. You're taking a picture of yourself. What is the purpose, you know? And sometimes I had a friend who was posting pictures of herself with like an inspirational quote underneath or whatever, but then she'd be posing kind of provocatively, and I'm like, and then you have like a quote from the Bible underneath. I don't know. That doesn't really seem to go together. So what is the purpose? What message are you trying to send when you share a selfie? And then if you're not being, you know, if you're showing a lot of skin, maybe it's not showing a lot of respect for yourself. And if you're a guy and it's like a female friend of yours, I mean, you know, she's still someone's sister, or, you know, like, that can be kind of awkward and uncomfortable for you as a friend. Like, I don't want to see that much of you. Like, this is making me feel really uncomfortable. I don't know, would that come across as judging her? Like, would that be wrong? Like, what would you do? What would you do? What Jesus did?
We said that it like the build up to the topic is important, so just to tell her that, you know, it's not coming from a place of judgment, that you care about her, and, you know, just try and find out if there's an underlying reason that she's seeking that much attention.
Perfect response. A+. You guys get to that one? Did you think about it?
I think we were just kind of like it's sort of like, so like, cause like a thing that like I don't really think about from a guy's perspective. It's like a guy's going out there is like, you know, check out my muscles, my abs, like, girls, you want me, you know, sort of thing, like, and it's sort of like, well, why do people do that? They want the attention probably because they really want love or friendship or something like that. And I think if you're close to them as a guy friend, you can just say like, bro, what are you doing? Like, this is weird, like, yeah, like,
Don't do that.
but then in another sense, you could also probably just say like, you know, say, oh, hey, maybe I should invite this friend to more activities together. And maybe once you like start hanging out with them more, then like it starts to, you know,
Sink in.
nurture the like the root cause a little bit, and maybe they suddenly are less interested in it.
Yeah.
So.
So smart. All right. Well, I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time, and we're at 8:59. Look at that. Well, I hope this was helpful. I hope you. I feel like I hope I have left you with some sort of tips to help out. You know, be the countercultural, be the example, and just to live a life that is not catering to this sexualization of the culture. And I think just by coming to this, just being part of this young adult group, I think is countercultural, right? I mean, how often do groups of people in their 20s and 30s get together and talk about their faith or topics like this? I mean, this doesn't happen all the time, and this is awesome. I feel like we're fighting the culture right now. Just being here. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for asking me to do this. Is there a question?
Oh, no.
No.
I'll just keep letting you wrap up.
Okay. Does anybody want to close this in, or should I close in prayer? Or do you want to close? I'll close in prayer. Okay. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, we thank you for allowing us to come together tonight for fellowship and for community and for this discussion. We ask you to give us the eyes to see the dignity in every human person that we meet. We ask you to give us pure minds, pure hearts, pure souls. We ask that we ask for strength as we try and grow in the virtue of chastity, to be the example to this world that is so desperately in need of this message. And Lord, we just pray for anyone who has been a victim of this culture, which is pretty much all of us in some way or shape or form. We're all a little wounded from the sexualization of the culture and from the rotten fruit of the sexual revolution. So we just ask for healing for that. And we know that you are the divine physician and you can do that for us. Continue to guide us on our journey spiritually, physically, as we venture out today. And please guide us, Lord. We ask the Holy Spirit to come upon us and guide us in everything that we do. Keep us safe, and we will close with a prayer to Our Lady, to a Hail Mary as we close out. Hail Mary,
Full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Amen.